Hey everyone,
Hey guys.
welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Today we're going to be talking about 10 things that we've learned over the last 10 years as travel therapists. It's kind of crazy, but May marks the 10-year anniversary of when we took our first travel contracts back in 2015, and 10 years flew by. It seems like it hasn't been that long at all. So um, we've obviously been taking travel contracts this on and off this whole time, but we've also now been really deeply involved in the travel industry for several years too, working closely with companies and managers and recruiters and tons of other travel therapists. So we've learned a lot over the last 10 years. And I think um, kind of summarizing it into 10 lessons should help some of you guys that are new or newer travel therapists or thinking about getting into travel therapy. So Whitney's going to introduce us and then we'll start going through the list.
Hey everyone. For those that may not know us, we are Whitney and Jared Kazaza. We're traveling physical therapists. And as Jared said, we have been traveling physical therapists off and on for about 10 years now. So a lot of experience in the industry. A lot of you guys may know us from Travel Therapy Mentor. Some of you guys may know us even from way back when we first started our very first blog, which was called Fifth Wheel Physical Therapist or Fifth Wheel PT. So yeah, as Jared mentioned, we've been involved in the industry a long time. If you are new to our page or our channel, welcome. We'd love if you'd go back and watch some of our older videos. We have done videos over the years, which have then turned into podcasts about just about every topic you can think of about travel therapy. We have a lot of insight and knowledge about the industry and what goes on. So yeah, definitely check out our stuff if you haven't before, and then welcome to those of you that are joining us again that have watched or listened in the past.
Yeah, also happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Today is Whitney's first Mother's Day, so it's a big day for us in the Kazaza household. Whitney, have you had a good Mother's Day?
It's been good. We spent some time this weekend celebrating our moms, and Jared got us a nice little gift today. I'll post some pictures that he got us some matching shirts for me and Aria to wear, and some nice treats and flowers and everything. So yeah, everything's been good. But yeah, it's crazy to think that it's my first Mother's Day. So those that may not know, we have a 6-month-old baby. A lot has changed in the last year. Last Mother's Day, we had our gender reveal party on Mother's Day and found out that we were having a little girl. But time flies. It's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since we graduated. But then also when I think about the fact that it's been 10 years, I'm like, oh yeah, we've done 10 years worth of stuff.
Yeah, we've done more than 10 years worth of stuff.
We've done a lot. So yeah, we're going to dive into our 10 lessons learned. If any of you guys are watching live on Instagram or Facebook, we'd just love if you'd say hi in the comments, hit the thumbs up button, let us know you're there. And then shout out to those of you that will listen later on the podcast or on YouTube channel as well.
Yep. All right. Lesson number one, it kind of goes into what we were just talking about. We've seen this with ourselves. We also see this with a lot of other travelers that we talk to, is that you can go into travel therapy with a plan. What are you doing? But your plans change as you travel. And that was definitely the case for us. When we first started back in 2015, we thought, okay, we'll travel for 5 years. We'll pay off our loans. Back then I thought like, then we'll put some money in real estate. I was really into thinking I would get into real estate investing, and we're going to travel to all these different states. And we're going to make our way across the country slowly. And we had this plan where we were going to go north to south in our fifth wheel every summer and winter to try to avoid the really cold or really hot. And basically none of that happened. And we started traveling, and our plans changed along the way. We were like, okay, well, let's stay on the East Coast. Well, we need to be home, close to home for this, and we need to do this. And eventually we started working fewer contracts, and we started traveling internationally. And the 5 years turned into 10. And I mean, we haven't traveled consistently for 10 years, but we traveled off and on that whole time. We've never had permanent jobs. I definitely would have thought after 5 years we would have stopped traveling and had permanent jobs. And yeah, just things changed, and that is probably more common than it's not. I would say most travelers go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to do all my contracts in California, or I'm going to go to all these different states. And then eventually maybe you go to a state you really like, or you meet somebody and you end up staying there. So you have to go into it with a plan, I think is smart, but also understand that your plans are probably going to change, and that you need to be a little flexible.
Yeah, so much can happen that'll just change your plans. Maybe you meet somebody, maybe you decide to settle down. Maybe you decide you don't like traveling and you stop traveling after your very first contract. We've known people that did that. Or you find a great permanent job on your very first contract and you end up taking a permanent job. Or like us, maybe you end up traveling way longer than what you thought. So as Jared mentioned there, we had this whole plan of how we were going to do it, but then we ended up really diving into the financial independence stuff, and it just started making a lot of sense for us to extend contracts and stay places longer and stay closer together on the East Coast. so that we could finish a contract on Friday and start a new one on Monday to reduce the downtime, and therefore reduce the amount of money that we were or not wasting time and wasting money by moving all the way across the country. We definitely, like, we got licenses in Arizona, and we definitely planned to go out west, and it just never ended up working out. And that was just kind of, it worked out for us. And then later on, after we had gained financial independence and we started taking more time off, we eventually did take a contract in Hawaii and Alaska, which were like big bucket list things for us. But yeah, we never really made it out to the Western continental US, which we definitely thought we would have. And then, yeah, the whole 5-year thing, we thought that we just figured 5 years was a good amount of time to see the whole country and then settle into permanent jobs and have kids. And the 5 years was kind of arbitrary because I was 25 when we graduated PT school, and we thought that by the time I was 30, that we would want to be having children. And then that didn't happen either. We ended up pushing that back because by the time I was 30, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for kids yet. And so 31 came, and 32 and 33. And so finally I'm 34 now when we had our first child. Well, was I 34?
Yeah, you're 34.
Yeah, when she was born. 33, I guess, when I got pregnant. But yeah, so plans change. So, go into it with, ideas of like kind of what you might think that you want to do, but also stay flexible and open to what life might throw your way. Because I think sometimes if you're too rigid with your plans, you might miss out on opportunities that you didn't know were possible. I guess that's really, back when we laid out those plans, that was us being, 25, 26 years old, not exactly knowing what we wanted our life to look like. And then amazing things came our way that we didn't expect. Like, I never expected that Jared would discover this financial independence community and suggest to me that we take 6 months off and go travel abroad. That was never in my, vision board or whatever. I just didn't even think that was possible.
Yeah.
So that was pretty neat that we ended up doing all that.
Number 2 is probably one of the most important things that we've learned, and it took us probably several years to understand this, but that there's no one size fits all company for everybody. And so all the time, people, new travelers or students that are thinking about traveling, they'll ask us, what's the best travel company, or what are the 2 travel companies I should work with, or which one should I avoid? And the truth is, like, there's over 200 companies that staff therapists right now, and they all have pros and cons. And that's why we spent thousands of hours now interviewing companies and recruiters and trying to find which ones work for which situations. And we harp on this quite a bit, but it is really important, because if you work with a company that doesn't have a lot of jobs that are going to fit what you want, then you're not going to have a good experience as a traveler. But if you work with a company that has a ton of jobs that you're looking for, you're going to have a good experience. And I think a lot of students don't understand, or new travelers, they don't understand that companies have different jobs, and they don't understand that some companies specialize in certain areas. And I've made this analogy, I guess, before, but when we're suggesting companies for people, it's not just like, oh, these are 3 companies that we like. We work with 12 companies, and we narrow it down based on,
I think it's 14 now.
14. We narrow it down based on what you want. And so if you're a OT that's looking for school contracts, there's some companies that you should not work with. They're not going to have school contracts. But there are some companies that are going to have a ton of school contracts. So if you work with one of those companies that doesn't have many school contracts, you might think, oh, travel sucks, it's not for me. When in reality, you're just working with the wrong company. And that's why you have to be very careful just taking recommendations from a friend that doesn't necessarily have the same situation as you. Maybe they work a different setting, or they want to work a different part of the country, and the recommendation they give you might not be a good fit for you.
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of like Facebook groups and people just asking us on Instagram, like, which companies are good, which companies are bad. And it's really, you have to dig a little deeper than that to see, like, what are your priorities? What are you looking for to know which company might be the best fit for you?
Yeah, we've at this point now, we've sent over 6,000 people out to companies that we work with, out of those 14 that we currently work with. But we had other ones in the past that we've worked with and we've taken off, and recruiters that we've added and taken off just based on how they're doing over time, and the opportunities that they have and what makes them unique and all that stuff. And yeah, so 6,000 people we've sent out, and no 2 people do we send to the same recruiters for, unless they have the exact same situation. It's always selected based on what you need.
Yep. Yeah. So with that said, if you guys are looking for, different company recommendations, different recruiter recommendations, please reach out to us. You can fill out our recruiter recommendation form on our website if you're interested.
And kind of along those same lines, number 3 is that recruiters change over time. And this is definitely something we did not realize when we first got into it. So in my mind, and probably a lot of you guys, when we started, I was like, okay, if we just find a company that pays really good and a recruiter that's really good, then we'll be in great shape. But like I said, the issue with that is we wanted different things throughout our travel therapy career. A lot of the time we wanted outpatient on the East Coast, but sometimes we wanted a part-time outpatient job in Alaska or a part-time outpatient job in Hawaii. And the companies that would find us East Coast jobs are not going to have those same jobs in Alaska and Hawaii. So you have to be flexible. And so sticking with the same company your whole career is going to be difficult if you want different things throughout time. And along those same lines, finding a great recruiter, you might find one or two that are really good right now, but recruiters change over time because for a variety of reasons. One, they have the same life circumstances you have. So, for example, maybe they get married, maybe they have kids, they have less time to spend on their jobs, so they're not as responsive and things like that. Maybe they get more busy. That's the thing we see very often is they'll be a really great recruiter, but as they go through their career and more people find out they're a great recruiter, now they get really busy and now they don't have much time to spend with new candidates. So now you as a new traveler, you hear from one of your friends that's a current traveler, this recruiter's great. Well, they might be great for your friend, but it doesn't mean they're always going to be great with new travelers that don't know much. They have a lot of questions. They don't really know what they want. And sometimes those really good recruiters or really busy recruiters, they would much rather take someone that knows what they're doing, that they've worked with before, place them in jobs, and not take all the time to go through the beginning hassle that happens with new travelers. So recruiters change. A good recruiter for somebody else might not be a good recruiter for you. It really depends. We've definitely seen that throughout our careers.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the same thing with like getting recommendations for companies from friends. Getting recommendations from friends for recruiters may or may not always be the best fit for you. Sometimes they will have been great for somebody, and then by the time that their friends start referring them to other people and they're getting, lots of business from different places, they may not always like have as much time to dedicate to new travelers. We've definitely seen some of our recruiters change over time, and there's some that we like stopped working with or stopped recommending because we just saw that they were too busy or their life had changed and they weren't as focused on their work anymore. And then also I think along the same lines is like certain travelers want certain things out of a recruiter. So there's some travelers who, are very straightforward and they're like, I don't need somebody to hold my hand. Whereas there's other travelers who really do want their hand held and they do want more guidance and mentorship and information, and they want the recruiter to check in. So you don't know for sure whether the person who's recommending the recruiter to you has the same values and the same perspective on like what is a good recruiter or not as you do, because recruiter personalities may not match the same. So yeah, recruiters can just be, they can be different for different travelers.
Yeah, and this is a mistake that we made in our own business because we started Travel Therapy Mentor now in 2018, so it's been 7 years ago. And back then, we only had the 2 or 3 companies that we worked with and the 2 or 3 companies or 2 or 3 recruiters that we worked with. So we got a lot of interest from people asking like, oh, what companies do you recommend? What recruiters do you recommend? And we were sending every person that came in to the same companies and recruiters. That's all we knew. And the recruiters got overwhelmed because there's too many people. So over time, we had to not only expand the companies we were working with to find good ones for different situations, but we also had to really expand the number of recruiters we have, because if recruiters get too many leads per week, they can't keep up. But the problem is no recruiter wants to tell you that they have too many leads because they always want more leads, right? So we had to massively increase that. So now we work with over 50 recruiters that we send people to at the companies that we work with. And that helps if you send like 1 or 2 leads per week instead of 15 leads a week. The recruiter is able to keep on top of it and do a lot better job with the leads you send.
Not only that, but different recruiters, like I think Jared kind of alluded to here, is like if they're really busy, but they have time to work with their current travelers because they already know their current travelers and they already have like a groove with them.
Yeah.
But taking on a whole new traveler, especially one that could be a little more complex in their job search, like maybe they're a little more particular in their job search, they may not be willing or have the time to want to spend on that. Whereas if it's somebody who's just like, I see this job on your website, I want this job, boom, 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 and it's just like really fast, then they're like, yeah, like I'll work with you because we're just going to plug you into this job and then my work is done. Versus like taking on someone who needs a lot more mentorship. They may not always be willing to go out of their way to do that. So
For sure.
yeah. But this, again, those two, I think, kind of go hand in hand, the recruiter and the company lessons that we learned over the years. And that's a lot of what we spent time on with Travel Therapy Mentor to try to help you all and help the industry, because we were finding that so many people, and we're going to get into this kind of, I'm going to lead into a little bit of this later one about how to avoid having bad contracts and a bad experience as a traveler. For those of you that don't know, like one of the big reasons that we started Travel Therapy Mentor is because when we started 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of information out there. There was really nobody to ask. There were no blogs or websites teaching you about how to be a travel therapist. And so we saw a lot of people get into travel therapy, have a bad experience, say that it's terrible, and then leave and stop traveling. And so, a lot of that is why we started Travel Therapy Mentor and putting this information out there for you guys. And I think a big piece of that is helping to match people with good companies and good recruiters based on those lessons that we've learned about them.
Yeah. I think sometimes in the past, people have gotten a little bit frustrated because people ask questions about recruiters or companies, and usually our answer is some variation of it depends. And like, with therapy, or like, I would imagine any of you guys that have gotten really knowledgeable about any certain topic, you realize that there's very often not black and white answers to anything. And that's why when someone asks like, oh, what's the best company? Oh, which recruiters do you recommend? It always depends. There's no one size fits all. The best recruiter for you is not going to be the best recruiter for somebody else. The best company for you is not going to be the best company for somebody else. So, we can't really just say like, these are the companies we recommend. We have recommend a lot. So it really depends.
Yep. All right. So back to our lessons that we've learned. The fourth lesson that we learned over the years is about housing, and that unfortunately there is no perfect solution for housing. Back when we started, we were kind of weighing the pros and cons of doing RV versus doing short-term housing. And we decided on RVing, and we thought this is going to solve all of our problems. It's going to make everything so much easier. It was going to make moving from place to place easier. It was going to be cheaper. Like, obviously we would RV. Why wouldn't we RV? Like, I can't believe that people go through the hassle of doing this short-term housing crap. Like, RVing is so much better. So that's why we decided to buy a fifth wheel, and we lived in an RV for 3 years, and we named our blog Fifth Wheel PT, and we were the RV people.
Yeah.
And then, over time we kind of learned like, oh, there's a lot of problems with this. It's not the perfect solution for everybody. And maybe it actually wasn't the perfect solution for us. It wasn't all bad. There were definitely pros and cons to it. In some ways, it did make it easier for us to move to place to place, not have to pack. We did save money in some regards. I don't know in the long term whether we really saved money. We probably broke even.
In the long term, we broke even. I tried to track the cost pretty well, and I think we probably, best case scenario, broke even.
Yeah. And so then, we ended up selling the RV, and then in subsequent contracts, when we've kind of been doing it on and off, like 1 or 2 contracts a year, then we did short-term housing. So we've done both now. And again, there are headaches with short-term housing too. So there's just really no perfect solution, I don't think.
Yeah. Again, it depends. It's situational. We talked about, in terms of RV versus housing, there are definitely situations where it makes a ton of sense to have an RV. If you've got a family or you have like several pets that would be hard to find short-term housing, then an RV makes a lot of sense. But for somebody that's a single traveler that doesn't need a whole RV, that just wants to rent a room in a house, then it would make way more sense to rent a room and save money that way. So yeah, no clear answer there, and there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah. So, when it comes to housing, I think you're just going to have to pick the lesser of evils and what works the best for you. For some people, RVing is just completely out. For some people, that's more the lifestyle they want to live, or they already have RV experience. And I think that would make more sense for you to go that direction. Other people are just going to have to kind of deal with the headaches of short-term housing. Even though short-term housing isn't perfect, it's usually the best choice for most travelers, I would say.
Yeah.
Allison on Instagram says, "Good day. Traveling by yourself with an RV would definitely be difficult." Yes, I agree, Allison. We know people that do it, if you're RV savvy or you're somebody who's already got experience with it, but I would have never done it by myself personally.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions on Instagram or Facebook, let us know. We'll answer those.
Yep.
Lesson number 5. We did an article and a video about this probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and this was one of them. One of the lessons, like I think I did 8 lessons back then. This is one, and it's important enough that we add it on here as well. Moderate pay, low cost of living can often be more lucrative than just taking really high paying contracts in expensive areas. So this is a trap that I think some new travelers fall into. I mean, even experienced travelers. They think, okay, I just want to take the highest paying jobs, especially like if you're flexible, you don't have a family, you don't have a lot of considerations on like where you want to go or what setting you want to work in. You think, okay, I'll just tell my recruiter I want to make the most money. I'll go take those jobs and I'll make a ton. And yes, you can make a lot of money that way. But the issue is a lot of those really high paying jobs are in expensive areas. And when we first started, I looked at that and I was like, well, we don't like cities that much anyway. We don't want to go to high cost living areas. Some of these other contracts in more rural areas actually pay pretty well, and we would spend a lot less. And if you do the math on it, a lot of situations, you can take a job in a moderate or low cost living area and get moderate pay, and you can come out ahead versus taking a high paying job in a high cost living area. So it's just kind of a trap that sometimes people think I want to make the highest I can without really considering what it entails to make the most you can. Often it entails spending a lot more money. So think about how much you can actually keep of the money you make versus just how much money can I make.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's how much money you're saving, how much money you're, putting aside that matters. And so definitely take into account the expenses side of the equation when you are looking at contracts. It's not always easy to do that. I'll say, like, when you're looking at different locations, sometimes you don't always secure the housing before you accept the job. But you can kind of run like a quick little search on Furnished Finder or Airbnb and just get an idea of what the housing availability might be and what the cost of living is in the area and how much money you're going to be shelling out each month to live there and to take that contract. And yeah, so quite often we found that we were coming out ahead financially by taking moderate pay, not always the highest pay package, but moderate pay in like a rural area. So that might be the case for you as well.
Lesson number 6, traveling with kids is a lot harder than we thought. And we've never taken a travel contract with our baby. We definitely thought that we would, though. And there was a time period, so like I said, plans change. We went into it thinking we'd do it 5 years, settle down, have kids then. Well, then at probably around 4 or 5 years of traveling, we thought, well, we don't want to stop traveling yet. We still want to see a lot more of the country. We want to go to all the national parks. There's a bunch of countries we want to go to. What if we did travel contracts with kids and we continued to live the same lifestyle? And there was a time where we were like, yeah, that would be so great. It would work out really wonderful. And
There was
now,
a time where we thought we would keep the RV and like maybe upgrade the RV and like have the baby in the RV. We talked about all kinds of things. We were like, maybe we'll even like bring one of our moms along to like babysit for us so we can keep taking contracts, or maybe
yeah.
we'll alternate and keep, one of us taking a contract, one of us not. We had definitely given a lot of consideration to traveling with children.
So now we have a 6-month-old that does not sleep very well. And we've learned that it's a lot harder than we would have thought. Like right now, Whitney and I, most of the time, are both at home, and it still is not the easiest thing to do. So thinking about being away from family and friends and everything, and just one of us staying at home with 1 or 2 kids all day, I don't know if I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I thought taking care of a baby, being at home with a baby would not be that big of a deal. But it actually, I mean, there are people, like we have friends who have kids that are extremely content. They sleep through the night and it's not a huge deal, but you don't know if your baby's going to be like that. And so, I mean, there's nights right now, our baby's 6 months old and she still will wake up 6 times in the night. So if you were both taking contracts and you had to find childcare in this area and you had to be up with a baby all night, I mean, it's a lot harder than we would have thought. And of course, it's hard for people with permanent jobs too, but there's just way more considerations. There's how do you find housing that will fit the baby? How do you got to pack and move more things now. Especially if you have school age kids, what do you do about school? Is it homeschooling? If it is homeschooling, then who does it? So there's just so many more considerations than we thought, and it is definitely way harder than we would have ever thought.
I think the biggest thing for me that I didn't realize is how much we would be leaning on family. Like we have both of our moms come several days a week and help, not both at the same time, but like they'll alternate. So most days of the week we have at least like a couple hours of somebody else to watch her so that we can get things done, go run errands, do, work for our business, whatever it might be. Go to the gym. Have time to shower, get the dishes and laundry done. So like, I think that would have been the hardest part of taking kids on the road and like traveling with them. Now, again, we only have a 6-month-old and we might change our minds. And there are lots of people that do travel with their babies and their children, and make it work. And like we said, most of them will take like where one spouse goes to work and the other spouse stays home with the child. We know a few couples right now that are doing it that way. And some people are totally fine with it. But for us, this has been a very challenging 6 months. Like it's been very humbling and a challenge that we never anticipated. So for us, we just feel like traveling is harder than we thought it would have been with the child. We've been on a couple just like little trips for conferences and to the beach or whatever. and just the amount of stuff you have to pack and bring, and it's not easy to travel with a baby.
Yeah.
Now again, traveling for a contract versus traveling for fun is different, but yeah, that was definitely humbling to us. And I don't know, we'll see. Like, we're not saying that we won't travel with a child. Like, we were on a hike the other day and we were like, man, we really miss Alaska, and Alaska's in the compact now. And so we could a lot easier, go back to Alaska in terms of licensure and all that. We're eligible for the compact. And we're like, man, maybe we should do that. Maybe we'll, do the road trip out there again with our baby, and one of us work or work part-time or whatever it is. But we'll see. But right now we're feeling like being home is the right choice for us with our baby right now.
Maybe there'll be a time when you can put her down for naps and she'll sleep through the night and then things will be a lot better. But right now, it's not one of those times.
Yeah.
All right.
So shout out to those of you that are making it work with children,
Yeah.
but it has been harder than we thought.
It definitely makes me appreciate moms more. Again, happy Mother's Day to everybody.
Yes.
Okay, number 7. Job boards give a skewed view of the market. Job boards didn't exist when we started. Like Whitney said, there was no websites, there was no information. I remember Googling travel therapy, and all I got was like a couple Reddit posts back in 2015.
About travel nursing, not even travel therapy.
It was nothing about travel therapy. So job boards didn't exist, but now there's some people that only find jobs through job boards. And that's a new thing to us and a new thing to a lot of the older travelers out there. What's interesting about it is if you would have told me 10 years ago that there would be job boards, I would have been like, wow, that's so great. All I really want is to be able to look at a list of jobs and choose what I want. And I think that's also what other people that are getting into travel therapy think. The issue with job boards, though, is it gives people a view of reality that's not exactly accurate. A lot of the job boards, they only have the highest paying jobs. They want to present their best jobs, obviously. A lot of the job boards, they have, well, depending on the job board, some of them have jobs that don't exist anymore. They used to exist. We used to see this all the time on places like Indeed, but I think some of the travel therapy job boards are like that too, where companies, if they ever had a job in a location, they would just list that job and leave it there. And then if you contact them about that job, they say, oh, actually that one's not there, but I do have this job. And it's just a way for them to get contact. So there's a lot of that. There's also listing gross pay, which makes pay look higher than it is instead of take-home pay like most companies talk about. There's basically a variety of ways that the job market looks different than it is. So, if you looked at a list of jobs on a job board, you might think, oh, average pay for a PT traveler in the country is $2,700 a week. When in reality, you're only looking at the very highest paying jobs, maybe the top 10 or 20%. The average in reality is probably somewhere around $2,000, maybe $2,100 a week take home pay, which is good, but it's not nearly as good as you would think it would be if you're just looking at job boards. So sometimes people, what happens is they find other jobs on job boards, then they want to go to, say, Hawaii, and there's no jobs on the board that they look at. So they tell the recruiter, I want to go to Hawaii, and they're expecting to make this $2,700 a week pay package that they see all these other jobs have, but the jobs that exist in Hawaii only pay $1,800 or $1,700, and they think, oh, this recruiter's taking advantage of me. This is BS. This is they're lying to me. But that's the truth. Like, a lot of jobs out there don't really pay that well. The average is fairly low. It's just that there are some really high paying jobs that make it look better than it is.
Yeah. I think job boards are really enticing. Like Jared said, in a perfect world, and I do think that, like, in some ways the industry is moving in this direction of technology where you don't have to have the information gatekept by a recruiter, whatever, English. Don't have to have it withheld by the recruiter where you have to go through the recruiter to get the information. And that's annoying to some people. They would rather just click on a job board, apply to the job directly, not have to go through this middleman. But we're in this hybrid situation right now where recruiters are still very much the norm for how we operate in the travel therapy world. And the job boards are just like an advertising scheme to get you in there. Now, there are some companies now that have apps that will streamline the communication between you and your recruiter, where you can go on their app and say that you're interested. You can kind of keep up to date on the jobs. But I will tell you that behind the scenes at these companies, there's still a lag. In most cases, they're still having someone manually input the jobs, and they're still quite often emailing the jobs to somebody or whatever. And so there's sometimes a lag before they hit the job boards or they hit the app. And so quite often you're still better off to be going through the recruiter who might find out about the job before it hits the app or hits the job board and can get you in there quicker. They also might have intel that the app doesn't have. They might know about a job that like their traveler is at right now that could be coming open, but it hasn't hit the job boards yet. And so you're better off to be talking to the recruiter so they can get you in there earlier. There's just a lot of reasons why we think that working through the recruiters right now is still in your best interest. And like Jared said, one of them among the issues is just that like they artificially will inflate like, oh, we have all these amazing jobs, but we're only showing you like the top 10%. But then if you're like really specific on where you want to go, those jobs may not be paying that high.
Yeah. And remember, we're saying this as people that have had a job list for 6 years now. So, I mean, we do our best to keep it as up to date and as accurate as possible. But I mean, we know that there's a lot of times by the time we get the job, put it on there, someone contacts us, that we get them in touch with the company, that the job's gone. And that happens so often on job boards. Um, the information is almost outdated as soon as you get it. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so it's definitely not perfect. I think a lot of them, it's a good way to kind of get an idea of what's out there, but definitely don't just assume that your recruiter is lying to you because of what they're telling you compared to what's on the job board. If anything,
Yeah.
I think the job board's probably lying to you
Yeah.
more than your recruiter is.
Very
So
often.
we still feel, and again, probably a lot of these lessons that we're telling you is like, you guys are old, get out of this. We've been doing this for 10 years and we like the way that it's kind of been done before. And so, of course, we think that still the best way is for you to have a good relationship with 2 or 3 different recruiters at different companies, to have a variety of information, diversify, if you will, the information that you're getting from 3 different companies. You can kind of keep an eye on a job board, look and see and maybe ask your recruiter about it. But if you're getting information from 3 different recruiters at 3 different companies and they're all telling you like similar things, then you can probably trust that they're not lying to you.
Yep. All right, number 8. This was very interesting to us. When we first started, we thought that we might want to work internationally, but what we found is that working internationally doesn't make sense for most people. So kind of after 2 or 3 years of traveling, we took a lot of back-to-back contracts, saved a lot of money. We thought, okay, we want to travel more for fun, do some of these we want to do a lot of international trips. There's a lot of countries we want to see. And we thought, okay, it'd be great if we go work in another country and we'll be able to make money and also experience these new cultures and all this stuff. And we started looking into it, and the truth is that most international travel contracts, keep in mind that only so many of them is it like feasible to only speak English. So there's already a barrier there. If you're going to a country that's not English speaking, you're going to have a lot of difficulty if you don't speak their language. But in addition to that, the pay is often half or maybe 60 or 70% of what you'd make on a travel contract in the United States. Also, there's visa issues. Also, there's licensing issues. Some countries, it'll take you 6 to 9 months, maybe up to a year to get the license. It'll cost $1,000 or $2,000. You have to deal with the visa, and then you make 70% or less of what you'd make on a travel contract in the United States. So when we started thinking about that and doing the math, it's like, this doesn't really make sense. Why would we do this? And so often we get questions from people that think like we did, and they're like, oh, I'd love to go work in another country. It'd be so great. Our answer for almost everybody now is work in the United States, take 3 contracts in the US, 3 contracts in 9 months, take the other 3 months off and go travel like we did. And you'll make more money in that 9 months than you'd make in 12 months working internationally, and you have way less hassle. So for most people, unless you're really thinking about moving to another country, I think that makes sense for the majority.
Yeah, the hard part is with travel therapy, because of the way it is in the US, you have these travel therapy companies that staff jobs in all 50 states. And so it gives you the optionality to have a ton of variety and hop around and do all these different things in a short time period. Most people aren't planning on traveling their whole career. We talk to most people that plan on traveling from 1 to 3 years. So if you want to travel for 1 to 3 years, you can see and do a lot in the United States in 1 to 3 years. You could take 3-month contract in Texas, and then in Washington State, and then in California, and then in Hawaii, and then Alaska and Virginia. And you could do all this in a couple of years while working with the same recruiting company, while dealing with just a minor hassle in terms of the licensure. But for the most part, your NBCOT or your MPTE, your national licensure and test that you've taken is going to allow you to go work in all these 50 states. You just have to get the individual state license. It's not that big of a deal. You can keep your same insurance. You can do all the same things, working with the same company. It's pretty easy. there are no staffing companies that do that internationally. So that's already a barrier. There's not just a staffing company that's like, yeah, we'll staff you in Germany and Italy and the UK and we'll staff you and drop you all these different places. That doesn't exist.
Well, the reason it doesn't exist is because the profit margin's not there for them. Like I said, these contracts don't pay that much. So a company in the United States that staffs people, they can keep a pretty significant portion of the money that was paid to the traveler. They can keep that as profit and still not hurt the traveler's pay too much. Whereas if you're only making $1,000 a week working in another country and they keep $100 of that, then that's a big portion of your income that they're keeping. So the profit margins for them to go through all this hassle of helping you get licensed and finding you jobs and doing all this stuff to make maybe $100 a week is not there for them. So you're not going to have these companies that hold your hand to do international contracts like you would in the United States.
Yeah. So that's one thing, is that just doesn't exist. Like, there aren't staffing companies that do that. So you're going to have to do all this on your own. Now, in addition to that, because it's other countries, the licensure and all those things is complicated. So it's going to take you a very long time and a lot of money and a lot of hassle. And then you have to find a job on your own. So in order to go through all that hassle, it would only make sense to do that if you were planning on staying there for a year or more. And so because of that, it's like, unless there's just like one country that you're really wanting to go to because you know a little bit of that language, or you're thinking about moving there, or you have someone that you know that lives there or whatever, and you're thinking about going to that one country as an international worker, then it would make sense. But it's not going to be this thing where you can just bob around and take jobs in different countries and do all these things. And you're just not going to have enough time probably in your career to do that unless you're planning on being like a career traveler. I think we've talked to like one guy who wrote an article. He's an SLP who has been kind of a career traveler. He lived this cool nomadic lifestyle, and he bobbed around to some different countries and did work, and he arranged it all himself. But he was like choosing to live this alternative lifestyle where he was doing these things. But that's like one person we've ever spoken to, and the other people that we've spoken to did it because they were going to move there.
Yeah.
So it's just not as feasible or as easy as you would think it would be. So like Jared said, we feel like the best thing to do is just use the flexibility of your travel therapy career in the US and then take time off to go over there and have fun. But again, like if you have a whole year of your life to commit, maybe you could make it work if you're just like, I really want to go live in New Zealand. There is an article on our website from a company that we did talk to that helps you to go work in New Zealand. And if you're like, I want to go spend 6 months or a whole year just in New Zealand, that would be so cool. Yeah, do it. But like, I don't think you're just going to be like bobbing around Europe working in all these different countries.
And you also have to just realize you're not going to make nearly as much money. You're probably going to make half what you would doing travel contracts. So it's going to be more expensive, less money. You're not doing it for the part of travel that most people do it is to make more money and save money, pay off loans and stuff. You're not doing it for that reason. You'd be doing it to maybe go live in this new place.
Yep. So yeah, that was an interesting lesson for us to learn once we started digging into the logistics.
And doing it the way we talked about, take 2 or 3 contracts a year, travel internationally with the other time. That's what we started doing in 2018. And we did that. And now we've been to 56 countries doing it that way. So I think that's the better way to do it than just like trying to find contracts and make it work that way.
All right. So we're coming up onto our last lessons, number 9 and number 10. If anybody is watching live and you just want to say hi or give us a thumbs up or ask us a question in the comments, we would appreciate that. And then if you are watching later, you can still hit the thumbs up button, or feel free to shoot us a message or leave a comment if you have a question later on as well.
All right, number 9. This is extremely important. I think this is the reason that travel therapy sometimes gets a bad rap, especially in schools from professors, is that you have to be very selective to avoid bad contracts. And new travelers, I forget that when we go to conferences or schools and we talk to students, that they don't know this, because this is now something that seems so obvious to us that it's hard to remember what it was like when we started. But some people think that like, oh, I'll work with one recruiter, they'll tell me what job to take, and I just hope that it's a good job. And there's people that travel like that for years. We've met travelers that they found a company at a conference, worked with one recruiter, took the jobs the recruiter told them to take, and that was all they did for 3-4 years. And they would say things to us about like, well, some of these contracts are pretty bad. And we're like, yeah, well, you're not interviewing. You're not even like looking at options. You're not interviewing for these jobs. Like, of course you're going to be put in bad positions if you only have one option. So you have to be selective. You have to have a criteria that you're going on. You don't want to go to really high volume outpatient clinics. You want to go to really high productivity SNFs. Avoid those contracts, and you have a much better experience as travelers. And we've been taking contracts on and off all these years, and there's only one or two contracts that each of us have had that we didn't like. Whereas we will talk to these people that get sent to these bad places, and they're talking about like half of their contracts being bad. You can fix that. You have to put yourself in a position of knowledge and power to be able to interview and avoid those contracts, and then you'll really enjoy travel therapy. So travel therapy gets a bad reputation, but usually it's from uninformed travelers.
Yeah, I think the big lesson, the big takeaway here is you need to do some research, and hopefully if you're finding our channel, if you're finding our page, maybe you take the time to dig in, read some articles, listen to some of our podcasts, inform yourself, and know the questions that you should be asking. Work with more than one recruiter so that you make sure you're getting a lot of different options. And I think the biggest thing is the interview. Like when you're interviewing with the facilities, make sure to be selective on which jobs you're choosing to take. A lot of these companies will try to sugarcoat things and make it sound better than it is. And then when you get there, it's a bad situation. So I think if you are selective, you can definitely avoid bad contracts. You can avoid bad experiences. But if you jump into it without having done your research, if you only work with one recruiter, if you really pigeonhole yourself into like only one location and then there's only one contract, so you never really had any other choices, and you're like, I guess I'll take it. It's a gamble. It's like, it may be a good facility, it may not be, because you don't know, and because you're so dead set on that location that maybe you glossed over some stuff in the interview where you're like, that was, a yellow flag, but like really it was a red flag.
Yeah.
And like you shouldn't have gone there. So you have to be pretty selective and be pretty savvy when it comes to being a traveler in order to make sure that you have a good experience, because at the end of the day, it's your career, it's your license. It's you that's committed to moving there for 3 months away from your friends and family and everything. It's not going to be the recruiter or the facility director that lives in some other state that convinced you it was a good contract.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can go wrong with traveling, but we think that you can mitigate those things by doing your research and being savvy.
And the way to do that for people that might be asking that question, like we said on the first few, is find a company that has jobs that fit what you want, have a recruiter that actually cares to help you, that's not too busy. And then when you interview, make sure you interview thoroughly on these contracts. We have articles and videos about interview questions, and ask the questions that let you know if this facility is likely to be good or likely to be bad. And you can not easily, but most of the time you can avoid the bad ones. And we've done a pretty good job with that, and we started out knowing nothing. So now anybody starting now has so much more information and resources that it's way easier than ever to avoid these bad contracts.
Yeah. All right. So our 10th lesson, the final lesson that we wanted to talk about today from our 10 years of being travel therapists, is your ability to negotiate as a traveler depends on the job market. And we say this because there's a lot of folks out there that will convince you or try to tell you that, being a travel therapist is so amazing and you're going to make all this money. And you'll see people in like these Facebook groups and stuff and say like, if you're not making $3,000 a week as a travel therapist, you're doing it wrong.
Back when we started, people used to say, if you're not making $2,000 a week, but now it's $3,000, it's upgraded.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so I know in the last one we said like, the last lesson we tried to tell you that it is so great and you're going to have a great experience, but we also feel like you need to have a good sense of reality of like whether or not you're in a position to negotiate and whether or not what you're looking for is realistic. And what I'm getting at here is like a lot of times these travelers that are like, I'm making all this money, they're the single traveler who's willing to work in any setting in any location, and they're just bobbing around doing all these different contracts,
often high cost living areas.
Yep. Whereas you might be reading that being like, I'm being taken advantage of because I'm not making all this money. But what you're not realizing is that your criteria is completely different than their criteria. Maybe your discipline is completely different than their discipline. Maybe you're an occupational therapist who only wants to work in pediatrics, and they're a physical therapist who wants to work in outpatient PT high volume clinics, of which there's thousands of jobs, and then your job pool is smaller because of your search criteria, and that makes your ability to negotiate and have these high paying contracts a lot different than that other traveler.
Yeah, again, this is one of those things like, we have a 10-hour, 12-hour course, and people will take the course, and I think I think a lot of times people think there should be some magic answer for things, and like I said, on most things it depends. And so when someone asks a question about like how do I negotiate, we have a section in our course on that, and the answer is it depends on the situation you're in. Because if you are looking for something very specific and you don't have any other job options and you really want this job, so say you want outpatient in Mississippi and there's one outpatient job in Mississippi, somebody will come to us and they'll say, how do I negotiate to get more pay on this job? And I'm like, okay, well, there's no other job options, so you can't say like you can't play the companies against each other and be like, okay, this one's paying me 1,800, or can you pay me 2,100, or this one's paying 2,500. If you have multiple options, then you can often say this one will pay me more. Can you match it? And they'll match it. But if you only have one option, and if you don't get that job, it's really going to inconvenience you. You don't have any negotiating power. Whereas if you want an outpatient job in California and you're working with 3 recruiters and each of them have 20 jobs and they all seem pretty decent, then you can say, hey, I just want to take the highest paying one. And you might interview for the 3 highest, and you might tell each of them, if you can pay me $100 more, then I'll take it. If you can't, then I'm not going to. And that puts you in a position where you can really negotiate. So the answer always is there's no one size fits all. It really depends. If you're in a situation where the company really needs you and you don't really need the company, well, then you have a lot of negotiating power, not powder. If you're in a position where you really need the job and they have multiple applicants, well, you have no negotiating power, and you might be lucky to even get the job at the listed rate. So, you really have to think about that. There's no magic answer. If someone tells you there's a magic answer, they're lying. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that want to tell you there's a magic answer because they're selling something or they want you to work with their recruiters or whatever. But take it from us, 10 years of doing this, there's never one size fits all answers for almost anything travel related.
It's funny because when we first started, I used to worry about interviewing for jobs or understanding how to negotiate or do all these things. And I've never taken a business class or whatever kind of classes you would take to learn how to be a good negotiator. I have no knowledge of them. I'm a physical therapist. Okay. But what I've just learned over the years is that like a negotiation is a give and take. If you have no power in the situation to give them something they need, then they're not going to give you what you want. Like it doesn't make sense, right? Like Jared said, if they have a ton of applicants who are willing to take the job at the rate that exists, then why would they be like, oh, this one is demanding a bunch more money and a bunch of time off during the contract? Why would they give you the job? You have to be in a position where you're willing to give them something that they need.
Like maybe you have a certification that would really apply to their patient population, or maybe you're saying, I can start instantly. I can start 2 days from now, and they're like, wow, we really need somebody. You have to have something.
Or maybe they really want somebody to commit to 6 months because it's Alaska and nobody wants to work through the winter. And that's not true, but they may have more contracts, more difficulty securing a candidate that wants to work through 2 seasons or whatever. And so maybe if you're willing to say, I'll stay there 6 months if you'll pay me this much, then maybe they're like, yeah, that's a really good prospect there. Maybe I should pay them more because they're willing to stay 6 months.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, you have to be willing to give them something that they don't have in order for you to get something back.
Yeah. You have to negotiate from a position of strength. So look for things that they need, look for reasons why they should give you more money. And that's how you negotiate. It's not just like, I want to make more money. What words do I say so they'll give me more money? That's not the way negotiation works. But I feel like there's a lot of therapists that think that's what it is you just have to say the certain set of words and then you'll just get paid more money.
Yeah. I mean, it used to just seem so like daunting to me. I was like, I don't know. How do you negotiate? Maybe we should take classes on how to negotiate. And there's people out there selling you courses on how to negotiate. But during this free live Facebook Live 5 minutes, we're going to tell you that like, you just have to have something that they need and you have to be negotiating from a position of power. And if you don't have power in the situation, if you only are willing to work in one setting in one location, and there's lots of applicants also for that setting and location, you just got to take what you can get, or else you can't play hardball because then they'll just won't give you the job.
Yeah,
and then you're like, crap, now I just lost the job because I tried to negotiate too hard. So you just kind of have to know the dynamics of the situation. Now, again, it never hurts to ask. Like you can always say, I would like to make more money, and then work with your recruiter to try to see if there's options.
Things like, is this really the highest you can pay? Is there anything we can do to increase this? Like things like that. Yeah, of course, that's not even negotiation. That's just trying to get the most you can. But yeah, you should always go into it trying to have them give you the highest number they possibly can. But in order to really raise the bill rate or in order to take the job from a different candidate, you have to have something to give, or be in a position where you have other options.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, that is a lesson that we have learned just through experience over the years, and I think that's a very important one for you guys, especially especially if you're a newer traveler or you're newer to the job industry in general, as you're trying to look at these contracts.
I guess one thing to say there too, though, is that part of the negotiating is having other options, which means you want to be working with more than one company. So if you're a traveler that found one company that you like and you're only working with that one company and recruiter, well, you have to realize that that recruiter has no really strong incentive to pay you the highest that they possibly can on a job, because you don't have any other options. But if you have two other recruiters that they're competing against, they want your business, well, now they do have an incentive to offer you the most they can, because say they offer you 2,500 when they could have offered you 26, and another recruiter does give you 26, well, now you don't work with them and they lose money on that. So that's one no-brainer in terms of having some negotiating power, is work with more. Why do I keep saying powder? Negotiating power is to work with more than one company, more than one recruiter, so that you have more options that way.
Maybe it's because you want there to be like a secret powder that
Yeah.
you like sprinkle to get the negotiation going. Buy our negotiation powder.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this video is getting long, so we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for those that are listening live and those that will listen later. Hopefully our 10 lessons learned from our 10 years of being travel therapists was helpful to you. There's tons of other things that we've learned over the years. It was actually kind of difficult to narrow it down to only 10.
It was kind of funny because when we started thinking, oh, we should do 10 lessons, I was like, there's not 10 things I can think of. And then we started naming all things, and I was like, oh man, we got to know this.
It's like 20.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do like a little article on this just to kind of summarize everything we talked about, and throw that up on the website too if you guys would rather read it in written form instead of our rambling about powder.
Yeah.
Hi, Jared. Jared Gankovich says, great video as always. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. I saw that you guys went to Yosemite, and I'm just so excited that you and Kaylee are living out your travel dreams.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It just makes us so happy to see people that we've mentored and talked to just out like living the dream.
Yeah.
It really is, travel therapy is not, it's not the end all be all. There's pros and cons. There's a lot of cons. I mean, there's a lot of struggles and things that you go through to be a travel therapist, but the amazing things that I see people doing because they chose travel therapy and they got outside of their little box of like their little hometown and traveled across the country and just did all these amazing things, met these amazing people, experienced these cool things. Like, it's just such a cool life hack, if you will, that we have as therapists.
We really take it for granted now. I mean, we talk about now we're not really actively traveling, and we still take trips like every month. Like Whitney, I'm always saying like we need to just like stay at home, but it feels like traveling, doing a trip a month is not really that much because of what we've done in the past. But in reality, for most people, like taking a weekend trip or a week-long trip every month is insane. So everything is in perspective. You have to put everything in perspective.
Yeah, it's been hard for us to be stay-at-home people.
Yep.
The last 6 months. It's trying to just plan trips all the time because we're used to taking a lot of trips, but to be continued. Keep in touch to see if we become not the traveling Kazazzas anymore, just the local Kazazzas. But
yeah, I saw Tyler earlier was saying that Fifth Wheel PT is the best blog ever. So
thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
Appreciate you. We met
the
Tyler. Was that first at our Denver meetup in 2020? I think is the first time we met Tyler.
I don't remember. I know in San Diego.
Yeah, but I think we met him before that. I think we met him in Denver. But thanks, Tyler, for the support.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for watching. Keep following along to see what becomes of our travel lifestyle. We'll see, but we'll keep putting out content for you guys. Sorry our videos aren't as frequent anymore. It's hard when you have a baby that doesn't sleep.
Yep.
It's hard to create content. But...
Yeah, and last thing, if you do want company or recruiter recommendations, we've spent thousands of hours now trying to find companies and recruiters that fit for various situations that you might be in, that will hopefully provide you with the best travel experience possible. Reach out to us and we can always help with that.
Yep. And again, as I've mentioned before, like those are all very personalized. So I read every single form that comes in and I answer it personally. So you'll see in the message, hey, this is Whitney. It's not AI. It's not our assistant. It's me. So I'll read your form and I'll recommend the recruiters. I think it would be a good fit for you.
Yep. All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye. Have a good night.